Welcome to Business Morning. It's the first Business and Markets Day in June. Welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world. I'm Boston Omofai. We're live to you from Channel's global headquarters in Lagos. Let's get the show started with what we call the developing story around OandO, Nigeria. The Securities and Exchange Commission fired OandO's Nigeria's board of directors over the weekend and appointed an interim management team pursuant to the conclusion of forensic audit and directives of several punitive measures against the energy trading company. That's a big story from Friday and is still developing as we speak. Meantime, industrial court has ordered immediate reinstatement of suspended SEC Chief Munir Guazo, but sources close to the former Director General says he is not resuming back as the Commission's Director General, laying to rest whether Guazo will resume today, trying to put into effect the orders of the industrial court made late Thursday. Meantime, the last may not have been heard on MTN Nigeria's shares trading in the first week of listing by introduction and investigations by anti-graft agency, the EFCC, and another independent probe by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Also on tap, starting from today, the new regulations on local government financial autonomy and transparency issued by the Nigeria Financial Intelligence Unit, or NFIU, starts today, but there are pushbacks by some state governments and local governments. We'll have time during the week to drill down on that. Meantime, the Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele formally begins his second term of 5 years today, June the 3rd, with Board of Governors meeting. We expect a press statement after the meeting today. A reappointed Emefiele is also scheduled to unveil his second-term monetary policy agenda in about 2 weeks' time. Also on tap this month, President Buhari's new cabinet and the new 9th Legislative Assembly, as well as the further discussions and tinkering with Budget 2019 already signed by Mr. President, process will be discussed with the leadership of the new 9th Assembly when they get into office. So it's not yet a closure on 2019 appropriations. Meantime, the Nigerian Stock Exchange new rules governing free float requirements and rules on securities transaction between dealing members take effect from today. Meantime, the rules for listing on growth board of the stock exchange will come into effect on June the 17th. We have all of this packed for you in the new month. But let's take you a little bit back to the big story, the developing story around OandO Nigeria PLC. Sources say some security agents sent to OandO's headquarters in downtown Lagos today to ensure unhindered resumption of Mutiu Sumonu, who is the head of the new interim management team, and other members, as the SEC sacks the board of the listed energy trader on Friday. The SEC says Sumonu and his team will prepare OandO Nigeria for the ordered extraordinary general meeting no later than July the 1st and appoint new board of directors to run the affairs of the troubled energy company. The SEC, in a 5-page letter sent to OandO over the weekend, asked the company to pay the total sum of 89.675 million naira and 8 directors sacked. All these directors are to immediately refund a total sum of 145,767,316 naira. The SEC also ordered OandO's founding group CEO Wale Tinubu and Chief Financial Officer Olufemi Adeyemo to pay the sum of 91.125 million naira to the Securities and Exchange Commission. Meantime, the group CEO Wale Tinubu and his deputy Godwin Omamofe-Bayo had been barred from holding office in public companies for 5 years, according to the SEC. So, what did SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, says his findings were in OandO after about 2 years of forensic audit? But simply put, and we'll try to headline that for you, the SEC highlighted corporate governance lapses, failure of internal controls, issues arising from the sale of OandO's subsidiary, OEPL, and suspected market abuse, which the SEC says has been referred to the Nigerian Stock Exchange and other enforcement agency. The SEC also accused OandO PLC of related party transactions and payment of interim dividend despite liquidity constraints. The energy company was also accused of false disclosures in the financial statements and non-disclosure of beneficial ownership by one of the directors. There are also tax-related issues by at OandO, which SEC said has been referred to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. According to the SEC, OandO deducted 24% as tax from dividend paid instead of the regulation of 10% deduction. Meantime, OandO says over the weekend that the SEC's actions are, quote, unsubstantiated, invalid, and calculated to prejudice the business of the company. The company says speculations on when SEC forensic audits were concluded and submitted is also out there, and not enough time was given to the company to engage with SEC and seek clarifications from the company. So the OandO says the SEC issued a press statement on its website before delivering a letter to the oil company at about 6 p.m. on Friday evening. In conclusion, OandO says, we, quote, we have consistently worked with our shareholders' interest at the core of everything we do, and went on to say that we will continue to appeal to the SEC to follow due process, allow us to defend ourselves, and then make a decision based on a fair process. That's the developing story. Now let's get started. Let's talk to Temple Ashaju, our business correspondent, live at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. He's taking us through the market whose sentiment is beginning to come back in a very gentle form. We finished last week around 0.6%. After several weeks of losses, the market seemed to be getting its bearing back with the MTN shares listed. Now, the OandO's big case. Temple, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Morning, boss. Morning, boss.
Yes, Temple, take us through the market. This was a 0.6% gain on the market, closing at the threshold of 31,000 on Friday, when everyone was getting a little bit of this positive sentiment back. Look at the numbers for us. Let's start from there.
All right, Bosun. So we added some 82.84 billion naira to the equity capitalization of the market last week in total. That's because, again, we had just 4 trading sessions for the greater part of last week. Recall that we had one public holiday, of course, for the inauguration of President Muhammadu Buhari's second term, which used to be referred to as Democracy Day. So of the 4 trading sessions, with the way we settled, was 82.84 billion naira that we were able to record. Of course, our year-to-date performance still remains in the positive territory. We had a positive week-on-week performance as well. Look at the activity level, was quite positive as well, 1.082 billion for the entire week, and of course valued at 18.11 billion naira. Recall that we had some serious rally for the greater part of last week as well. In total, we've got some 16,400 deals for last week. If we go to the sectoral analysis, we'll look at the fact that almost all, in fact, all the sectors actually closed in green. The banking side of things got UBA, Axis Bank, and Zenith Bank, key banks in the front line, all of them helping to push up the indices. Consumer goods segment, of course, also did so well. Was up by some 1.31%. Dangote Flour and, of course, Nestle were the key drivers in that sector. Industrial goods segment of the market has got CCNN and Julius Berger, and, of course, a host of other companies, contributing massively to the gains we recorded in that side. The insurance side of the market saw Mansard contributing some good numbers and some good margins to what we saw the indices settling at, which was up some 328 basis points for last week. Oil and gas was also positive, 2.14%, thanks to Seplat, which was by some 5.75% week on week, and was able to push up that side of the market. If we look at the unlisted securities market, which represents the NASDOCC now, that was kind of negative. It was down by some 17 basis points last week. Preceding week is settled at 749.88 in terms of the US side, the indices, but last week it actually closed at 748.62. We got a market capitalization that depreciated from 538 billion to 537.84 billion naira last week. And of course, the volume of transaction for the entire week was just 34,534, valued at 3.97 million naira. If we look at the fixed income side of the market, beginning with bonds, specifically on Friday, we saw a cold market. Market participation was relatively quiet. We got the fact that there was some kind of demand at the mid to the long end of the curve, but there was some kind of serious sell down on the short side of the curve. That's on Friday specifically. Basically, average yields on Friday declined by 8 basis points. But if we look at the weekly valuation of the bond side of the market, average bond yields actually closed flat week on week at some 13.94%. We got increased demand across the July 2021 security for the greater part of the week, which compressed by some 53 basis points and impacted on the mid and the long end of the curve. The fact that we had some serious sell down on that side of the market, that demand on July 2021 security actually offset the sell-off that we saw there. But for the treasury bill side of things, we got some buy interest on Friday, the short end of the curve, but then we saw some sell interest at the mid to the long end of the curve. An average yield was eventually up some 9 basis points. But recall that we had some auctions of some 67.4 billion naira last week. That was offered. We saw subscription coming in at 195 billion naira.
Yes, at Tempo, a very interesting market we had last week. If we stick with the equity side, if we look at those 5 sectors, this was a week when it looks like the market was coming back, as it were, despite the usual end of the month adjustments. And in all these 5 major sectors, if you look at the banking sector, almost 4% in a week. If you look at the week and the week before that, this was all the sectors, including banking, that were depressed, again, by the big entry of MTN Nigeria and all of that. But then we had a very, very big, solid week if we go by these 5 major subsectors of the market. And then on Friday evening, the entire OandO story blew up with the SEC sending a press statement and, of course, all these stories following that over the weekend till this morning.
Correct, Bosin. I mean, all of that at the end of the day, it kind of changed the perception of investors about the market. It kind of affected the kind of investor sentiment towards equities. You recall that it all started with the issues of MTN, the fact that EFCC, got into the whole the office here in Lagos, and of course began a kind of an investigation. That began to affect the share price of MTN at some point. Then again, we had some kind of reactions coming from the regulators. The fact that SEC itself says that it is also looking at the whole matter. We understand eventually that the SEC is even on the board of the EFCC. So all of that kind of brought a bit of equilibrium eventually. And then we saw some kind of resumption on trading on the shares of MTN. But on the Friday, as he said, the issue of OandO came on board. And I guess that some investors have actually, gotten wind of what was going to happen on that Friday. Because if you look at how OandO, for example, performed on that Friday in the market, it was really negative. It was down by some 0.31%. Eventually, we saw it losing some 45 kobo. It was a particular company that some investors were really watching when they resumed on Friday, because when they did the valuation, it was realized that, the share price of OandO was really low at some 4 naira 30 something kobo. So it was something that some investors were considering before, the news, set in, and then we saw about 30 million units of the shares, sold off on that Friday. And that's how it settled at 4 naira 20 kobo, which is what you have it at about now in the market. Although in early trades we haven't seen some kind of reactions to that yet. We do hope that investors will certainly, react to that based on the news that we have received on Friday, and which actually filtered through the market over the weekend. Both.
Yes, at Tempo, what we are dealing with as far as the developing story for OandO this morning is that, of course, a new interim board has been put in place according to a statement from the SEC. Mutius Sumonu is the interim head of this new team, which will have just about 30 days, technically speaking, till no later than July the 1st. So today is the first business day in the month of June. So technically they have 30 days to organize an EGM and appoint a new a board of directors. So this is not a very long, it's just about a 30-day hit the ground running and vacate. That's how this looks like, as it were now. So this is one developing story. What are you hearing this morning as you hit the market street on what has happened since Friday, late Friday that was?
Well, it's a bit of a mixed reaction so far. What we're hearing from here on the floor is that, I mean, some investors also really have interest in OandO. It was on the news yesterday that some people allegedly, are looking to take over OandO, and that is why we have these issues, permeating the system at this point in time. So for that reason alone, some investors, some traders here do believe that it won't impact too negatively on the share price of the company. Here on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, we don't know of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, where, it is dual listed with NSE. So, but for here, which is where the company is domiciled, it is hoped that the losses that we will record on it today won't be as huge as, expected out there. But basically, we know that the management of OandO has actually, opted to go to court for some kind of litigation against its regulator, given the notice that was issued last week, Friday, saying that the director and the deputy CEO and, of course, the CEO will be banned, of course, for a period of 5 years from the, holding some kind of directorship position or on the board of companies, for 5 years. So that we'll wait to see how it will pan out, because again, OandO is not a small fry in the system. One thing that someone told me earlier this morning here on the floor is that you have to look beyond now for OandO. Is this a company that will continue to exist or not? In fact, with the fact that some people are looking to take over the company, what is going to happen? So people are actually keeping fingers crossed. Investors are keeping fingers crossed at this point in time. We do hope that, the intervention of the regulator by way of an interim management being imposed right now will come in. And if it doesn't come in, what then happens? That's the question we're asking, or people rather asking Bosun.
Yes, Tempo, this has been in the news one way or the other since 2017. So 2 years thereabouts since those petitions went to the SEC, and the SEC then under Munir Guazo moved in there and all of that. So perhaps based on what you heard is that, look, this is a going concern. OandO is a going concern. This has been in the news. Perhaps some investors had priced in the likely end of SEC's investigation. Perhaps they had priced in whether the group CEO will be asked to step aside. Perhaps there will be some punitive measures. Almost everything that is in the that the SEC released were what was already in those allegations which you had since 2017. So perhaps investors are now, like you said, looking beyond this SEC's punitive measures against those directors who the SEC says were directly involved. And that was stated there, that were some of the directors that were involved and the actions taken against them. So we would like to see how investors would trade this action moving forward, knowing fully well that perhaps this isn't something like just dropped out of the blues, as it were. It's been there all the while, that there could be some punitive measures against OandO. How far that will be and the ramifications, the consequences for the market. But some of the things being heard on the street, Temple, is how, what about the perception of what is this now? Is that what you talk about, the mixed reactions, as it were? Some believe that the SEC need to tread very carefully on this matter, again, not to injure what you call shareholders' interest or, quote unquote, destroy the company, according to some sources.
It's true, Bosun. That's the understanding that folks have out there. But the other side of the reactions we're getting is that, look, somehow, one way or the other, this particular company, which has been in the news for so long, for donkey years, has actually got corporate governance issues. And so they're not too surprised now that the Securities and Exchange Commission is wading into the matter at hand and trying to see how they can, apply these punitive measures on it so that it can actually serve as some kind of a good example, for some other companies in the market that has related issues, with their corporate governance matters and all of that. You recall, you actually mentioned some of those issues that actually got the, that attracted the anger of the Securities and Exchange Commission. Key point there is the false disclosure, which of course some people have actually really been expressing serious concerns about. Someone actually said it yesterday that, look, that's not the only company with corporate governance issues. There are quite a number of companies with corporate governance issues. By the time OandO is made an example, maybe others will actually, sit tight and address their corporate governance issues in the market.
Yeah, yes, Tempo, thank you so much. We'll come back. Stand by, Tempo. We'll get back to you at the floor later on the program. Let's take a break, everyone. We're still talking about the developing story around OandO Nigeria PLC.